All right, good morning. It's Diana Minotti with Diana Minotti Fine Art Antiques and Collectibles and the show of Diana's Treasures, a day in the life of an estate appraiser and liquidator. The
An
people,
auctioneer.
I keep forgetting that. Yes, we are licensed Florida auctioneers. I'm here with my husband, Perry Matrano,
Hi, good morning, Diana.
and you'll see Perry over at the gallery. I'm in the field digging out the treasure, and Perry's in the gallery showing it off.
Yes, our gallery is located at 15 Palm Harbor Village Way. You'll see a sign that says Diana Minotti Fine Art Antiques and Collectibles. And I'll be in there Monday through Saturday. Just sometimes on Thursdays not available, but I'm here. And you come on in and say hello and show you around and let you see what we have. We have beautiful fine art. We have many antiques. We have lots and lots of collectibles. And if you need to find that beautiful fine china set, we have some beauties in there.
Well, the holiday season is upon us, so if you need china, crystal, service items, hostess and hostess gifts, we definitely have that. Our guest today, I'd like to introduce Jordan Farrell of Florida Beaches Realty over in Flagler Beach. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And we're going to kind of gear the show on, since Jordan's a realtor, we really need to talk about the folks that we deal with that are looking, they're usually older and they're looking to downsize and relocate. And it's a daunting task. I think as the older you get, it becomes more and more overwhelming. And this is kind of your last stop.
But wait a second. Wait a second. Jordan's here to tell us about real estate too, and all of that. But we really have another side of Jordan that we have to talk about, and that's definitely going to come up in the show and tell, which of course you know is my favorite part of the show. So, but anyway, Jordan, tell us a little bit where you're from, how did you get in real estate, and what it is you do, and then Diana will ask you those other questions.
So I was born and raised in Maryland. Grew up in Salisbury, Maryland, and Ocean City, Maryland. Kind of, the Bunnell to the ocean. So I was a country boy that went to the beach a lot. Loved growing up there. But my parents moved down here in 2004. I started visiting them, fell in love with the area, moved here myself in 2012, and I was already a realtor for 10 years in Maryland at that point. So my mom was a realtor here, owned a brokerage in Flagler Beach, and when I moved here, we became partners. Now I'm very honored to have my mom as one of my agents that works for me. She's actually more of a office mom, if you will, and she's at the office now while I'm here hanging out with you guys. But it's been a family business for a long time. My mom used to be an architect, and I started drawing houses when I was 16 for her, and she would fix everything I would mess up on the house. And my dad was flipping properties when I was 8. I started kind of just goofing off. I'm sure I wasn't much of a help, but I started working on houses at 8. So big background in housing, development. Did a couple spec houses right before COVID. Was going to get more into that and decided not to. Probably should have, but it was a interesting time to figure everything out. Then decided to open my own brokerage about 3 years ago. We've been about 3 years strong. We are direct oceanfront in Flagler Beach, so it's a wonderful place to have a meeting. If you haven't been by 7th North, it's where the Sip and Surf coffee shop is. So we have a coffee shop on site. I was fortunate enough to buy that building.
What's the address?
701 North Ocean Street.
I think what's great is you turned upstairs into an Airbnb. That was really smart.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to buy the property, about 5 years ago, I guess. Kind of before the market went nuts, and gutted it, remodeled it, and we put 2 Airbnbs upstairs. We have a studio, and then we have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Then my real estate brokerage is downstairs, separate from the coffee shop, and then we have the coffee shop. That whole area of Flagler's really developed in the last 5 years. It's really kind of cool. Tony's Wine is just north of us. There's another place called the Purple Donkey, which is a craft soda place. It's an interesting place. It's busy.
Craft soda place.
Craft
Interesting.
soda.
I have to try to
Very
hit that.
popular for people that like comic books.
Well, Diana, you were going down a road here on a discussion, and I rudely interrupted, but that's what I do for you. But go ahead.
It's all right. It's all right. I mean, this is a kind of just a conversation, and we talk this all day long, is how do we help our customers, our clients, how do we help them downsize? And I think what they really need to realize is what's going on in the market. If they're going to put their house on the market, what it really takes to get prepared, and if they are going to downsize to getting into something else, what is it really going to take? And I think if they are assured that they're working with a good quality realtor that knows the market in the area, um, what are you doing?
He's showing he's
We're-
showing
we're
people
on- we have a
candy.
show on
Yeah.
YouTube. I'm
Dude,
just showing. I'm showing.
I know, but we're talking about real estate, dude.
Well, I'm showing real estate.
He's pulling the attention, keeping him
You know,
prevalent.
this is what happens when you work with your wife and she's your boss. Okay. Go ahead.
The boss. Who's really the boss? Oz behind the curtain, but we won't say anything. Getting back to how many houses are on the market right now?
So right now, just single family residential, we have 944 houses on the market.
All right, that's a
So
lot, isn't
that's,
it?
Yeah, it's a good amount. I mean, I wouldn't say it's extremely large. I mean, there's still a shortage of homes available for the amount of buyers that are out there. The issue is that a lot of people are on hold right now. There would be a lot more houses on the market if it weren't for the fact that the people that have purchased houses have a very low interest rate, and it's hard for them to leave that because you can't really go out and get a like-kind property if you're at a 2.3% interest rate. And you're going to sell that and then go to a 6% interest rate or something similar to that. You're 50% value difference. So it's a lot of people are in kind of a stuck position right now. What I'm seeing is that more people are turning those properties into rentals and keeping the property because it's essentially free money. So if you need a move in your life, and then that's where, I also own a property management company. That's where the property management side of it comes in, where we can get them, top dollar on the rental, show them how to, properly invest their money. Hopefully it's covering itself and allows them to potentially free up the ability to move to their next step or wherever they would like to go.
But doesn't it affect as far as if they leave their established home that they've been there 20, 30, 40 years and they go into a new build? What's the difference in property tax?
Well, so, yeah, your taxes are definitely going up. But if you've been there for 20, 30 years, more than likely you're paid off or you have a refinance or something. So there's quite a bit of equity. So it's a little different than, someone that bought during COVID that got a 2.3% interest rate. For that situation, it's really coming down to, okay, what type of money do you need? What type of financing do you need on a regular basis? What's your budget look like? And are you capable of making the additional insurance? Your insurance probably will actually go down sometimes, depending on where you buy it. If you're on the water, it may be higher. Or if you're closer to a hazard area like direct oceanfront, it might go higher. So that's kind of a trick question. But your taxes, it's really going to come down to price. If you're going from a paid off, house that was valued back in the day for $300,000 and it never really increased in value, and you just sold it for $900,000. Yeah, your insurance is going to go up. You're going to be quite a bit higher. So, and your insurance and your taxes are going to go up. So it's kind of a win-win though, because then they're putting $500,000 or $400,000 of equity in their pocket, and hopefully they're not necessarily going and buying another $900,000 house. Maybe they're going to go buy a new $400,000 house, and now they put $500,000 of equity, and then they potentially go invest that with a financial planner that's now getting them a nice return on their money of, hopefully a minimum of 10%, hopefully closer to 20 or 25%. And then that's a good financial strategy. But every person's different. So it's hard to say what your direct, our job as realtors are to be listeners. We listen to their situation. We listen a lot of times when they're going to assisted facilities, living facilities, we're listening to the family's opinions as well, because it's the entire picture that makes sense for that person. And the goal is, how do we put them in the next best situation for them for the next 5, 7, or
that brings us on to another discussion. But before we go on to that discussion, I want to ask you 2 quick questions. So let's help people out. What's the quickest, the simplest thing? Someone doesn't really have a lot of money, but they got to sell their home. What is it that they could do, to just make things look better, so that they could at least put the house on the market? And then we need to move on to the next question, which is what should they do to prepare the contents, which Diana's the expert.
Well, so the number one things to do is declutter, clean. Cleanliness is close to godliness. The cleaner, the better it smells. Landscaping a lot of time is a very inexpensive way to do it.
Quick curb appeal, fresh
quick-
fresh mulch.
And we were talking earlier, just coming up and seeing a front door that has a bunch of mud wasp or cobwebs or something. It's not necessarily a good first impression. First impressions mean a lot. So your front landscaping, when you initially see the house, you need to get people through the door. And then it's the job of the realtor to potentially, hopefully you have a good buyer's agent, to potentially combat any issues that may arise while you're inside. Hey, I have a guy for that. And this is what I would recommend doing. It's not that much money. It'll cost X amount of money to take care of that problem. And if you really like this house, I'd love to get you a quote during your inspection period.
So dirty dishes in the sink and a messed up bed is not exactly the way to show your home, right, Diana?
No.
Let's not go there. So, and just that first appearance is really, truly, I ring the doorbell to go meet a client and, put out a fresh doormat, buy one at Dollar General, $10. Sweep, get all the cobwebs out. People all go through their garage door. They drive up and they go in the garage door and they don't really look at their front door. So you really got to step back and really look at what other people are going to see.
I can't clean the leaves at our front door, let alone be as neat as that. So
Look, I gave in giving up the lava rocks, and now you got the soft rocks, and now you want to get
All
rid of
right,
my
okay.
seashells because they.
all right, no
Come
comment.
on, man.
No comment. Okay, no comment. No comment. Let's move on. So, what do you do, Diana, to prepare a house ready for an estate sale?
Well, the decluttering is always.
And why
a
should
thing.
someone use an estate sale? Well, why?
Well, wait a minute. As far as whenever I find out that there's a realtor going to be involved, I immediately say, hey, listen, let me come in first and let me stage the house. You get good MLS pictures.
Well, what does staging mean?
Staging and getting it looking like a magazine shoot, not that not that they're, like living there. You really want to get it depersonalized, clean, and neat as possible. Take all the family photographs and pictures and magnets off the refrigerator.
Just lining something up in the right way. You go into a house and the master bedroom or primary bedroom, excuse me, the main bed is to your right and your fans directly overhead, and then to the left you have your entertainment system. Well, you're not lined up, and it's the little things like that, just uniformity when you walk in. That's to me and Diana we might go crazy over. But if you're living there all the time, that's how you like to live. It's just a little tweak that'll let people in their brain say, "Oh, this house is."
Well, I always look to from a real estate point of view, what are the most special features about the house? If it's a fireplace, make the fireplace shine and make that a focal point. I know it's the clear through. You want to open the front door, look into the living room, look onto the lanai to see the pool, to see the canal. Make that.
Instead of seeing
transition.
100 photos on the way to it.
Well, no, it's that people put furniture in front of doors. They put stuff in front of windows because they're just comfortable that way. So repositioning the furniture, getting even flow, getting rid of all the scatter rugs. They're just a tripping hazard. And really, really getting it down to the basics and tucking away so that they can get good MLS pictures. Without good pictures on the internet, no one's coming to see that house.
Well, speaking of
Don't you
pictures,
think?
you oftentimes take a lot of pictures when it comes to our estate sales.
Hundreds.
You put a
Hundreds.
bazillion pictures on our website and share all the time what's up for sale, what's happening, and all of that. So, it is time to move on to the next segment, which of course is our show and tell. But before we do that, was there anything else that you wanted to cover with Jordan? Because this is our.
The only thing I find for folks that they get overwhelmed is they need a new roof. They need a new AC. They need things that are really going to cost a lot of money to replace. And they're not in that position.
So one of the ways you can combat that is, if you can't afford it, a lot of times I'll have a roofer come over, give a quote before we list it. And then the roofs are a great example. They're the easiest one to do. But you can get the quote done. In the negotiation parts of it, a lot of FHA and VA loans are going to require a newer roof.
Mm-hmm.
So during that period, you can talk to the buyer's agent or the buyer and let them know, hey, look, the seller is willing to have the roof put on during the inspection, after the inspection period is over and after your escrow goes hard. About a week or two before we settle, we'll have the roof put on the house for you. And then when the appraisal happens, it'll come in with a new roof. The roofer, if you develop a good relationship, will collect it at settlement. Now, there is slight risk to that because if it doesn't go through, the seller at that point is going to be liable for it because their name is going on the title. But you try to do everything you can to get it to that end point where it's very safe. There's escrow in the account. A lot of times I like to try to get enough escrow in the account where it's covering the roof cost, which really takes the burden off the seller possibly having an issue.
The roof thing has been a challenge. Well, before we move on to the next,
Well, and I just want
item.
to say one more thing. Cleanliness, when you talked about that, I have a lot of people, we're going to do the estate sale, and we need to have the carpets and the floors steam cleaned. You need the place clean. If it's clean, not only your house is going to sell, but all the stuff in it will sell. But if it's not, it's a hard sell.
And that's the exception to the rule, because that's why when you hire Diana Minotti Fine Art, Antiques and Collectibles to do your liquidation, you get that service. Like, you spot that. Where a lot of times other companies that do the business, they just come in and just clean stuff up and just, and that's it. But you try to help the people that are contracting with
Well,
you.
we're
and
on a
that's important.
team, and the big money is in the house. The estate sale, this is pocket change to help you sell the house.
Correct.
This is so you can paint, mulch, steam clean,
And move your stuff out of the house.
get a maid service, do a deep clean of your appliances and bathrooms and things like that. It's
And I
just
will say
necessity.
from experience and working with you guys, I've done multiple sales where I've represented the seller and you guys have done the estate sale. It is much easier to sell a Diana house than it is not necessarily to deal with it without you, because you do a lot of the legwork up front. And I appreciate that part of what you do in your business. And just the influx of people you bring during your sales makes my job so much easier because we're doubling up the marketing. We do a wonderful job of marketing. You have a wonderful following locally in Palm Coast and the surrounding area. So when we are selling one of your houses that you're doing a estate sale on, it's getting out everywhere. So for you realtors that are out there listening, you're making a mistake by not referring you to come in and do the estate sale and trying to piggyback off of that marketing and getting the house up, because a lot of times you can do potentially an open house during the estate sale as long as you okay it with Diana.
It's the largest open house you'll ever do, right? I mean,
By far,
500 people.
by
so-
far.
And before we move on, so there are so many things to really talk about, but I'd like to plug your podcast because we have to talk about stuff like realtor versus no realtor attorney, title company roles. There are just so many things. What to do for repairs. There's just so many things.
Well, maybe we'll do a second
Yeah,
segment.
we may have to. So tell us about your podcast, and then we'll get on to my favorite segment, which is, of course, show and tell.
So we're doing a weekly podcast called Investors Corner. It's not just real estate; it's also investment opportunities. It's just overall, building wealth. We talk about compounding interest, and I believe that's a really great phrase for
Important stuff.
not only real estate, but these things. Collectibles in general, compounding interest is actually a real thing through life. So time is the best key for creating wealth.
I have a few clients that have stopped collecting real estate and they've put their money into fine art and collectibles.
There's a season for everything. We talk about cryptocurrency, and some people will believe in it, some people won't. But there's a time for everything. There's money to be made on a lot of different things. But keeping your eye on the market, keeping your eye on what investments are, this type of investment is just fun. There's history around
And where
it.
do they find your podcast?
So it's Investors Corner. If you go to our real estate Instagram page, it's at fbrealestateco.com or at FBRealestateCo. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all those places. But that's the primary area, and that'll show where the podcast is as well.
Awesome.
It's also on YouTube and other areas.
Okay, so, boss, do I have your
Yes,
okay
go
to
for it.
go forward now? Okay, all right. So, two things. One is that a lot of you folks here that grew up in my era, and even today, we have silly putty. Silly putty was a crazy invention that you could use, and a lot of us children oftentimes would take our silly putty and open up it comes in this eggshell, and you open it up, you crack it open, and then there's this stuff in here, and you get it warm, and you mill it down. And what you do is you take like a magazine. We oftentimes
Oh, it was
took
the Sunday Comics.
the Sunday Comics,
That was the
right?
whole thing.
And we would, or your brothers, my case, my older brother's comic books, and I would sit there and I would stretch it open, right, like this, and we get it down to where we could keep patting it down. And a lot of people don't know, but you're supposed to use the shell. You're supposed to use the shell to press it down into it. I'm showing you here in a penny saver. You're supposed to press it down with the shell to get it flat into. I'm having so much fun. And you do this and you squeeze it in there and you press it down as hard as you can. And then what you do is you carefully pull it away, right? You
Mark is very amused right now.
Right. You carefully pull it away, and you get the ugliest map that you could possibly imagine. I am out of practice, okay? I'm not kidding. This is 60 years ago that I played with this stuff. So at the end of the day, I decided to bring it in because I thought it was appropriate to have, here you go, Mark. I thought it was appropriate to have the silly putty for the comic books. But Diana really didn't want me to use it on any of the comic books that we have.
Not that we're selling, no.
Oh, well,
Remove the ink. You're taking the ink off of the paper.
Nobody would know. So anyway, let me show you the ones that I have because they're not as important as what.
But you brought up a very good. We were talking about the show this morning, and you brought up a very good point. And I said, "Oh, when was the first comic?"
Wait, I brought up a very good point. What was that?
I said to you, "When was the very first comic?" And you said they've been doing it for since the Roman times, making fun of the.
I think the cavemen were doing it too on those things that are on the cave walls. I think those are. Listen, they used to make fun of the Caesars, and they used to paint stuff about the Caesars, make them look silly, right? Because that's what they do.
Right.
They do it today. Presidents. And
So
kings.
that's what made me realize that we have at the shop the French Marconi led Astray. It's printed for St. Paul's Church out of London. And you want to put it over there?
Yeah.
These are satirical etchings, and they're fantastic. I have Night Amusement, and which one do you have? And that one.
This
The
is
guy with a bunch of ladies, right?
the French Marconi.
Yeah.
But here's the thing you have to understand. What we're showing you today are pieces of artwork inside a frame. But this was also on magazines, the newspapers back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
This was how they would get the information out and who they wanted to target politically. It was. So, and then speaking of targets, so this is a bit of a more adult magazine. This is from the 70s. A bunch of people, hippies, hanging out, and enjoying themselves. And in this particular magazine here, there's a few illicit things going on, but not illicit so much in many states anymore. So that's
Right,
this one.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And this is another one. It's just so weird. It's almost, I don't even know how to say it. I was reading it and I couldn't focus for some reason. Might be the stuff that was on the paper. But then we have another one, another group, and this is also very adult. This is a Freddy the Fat Freddy's cat, and it's an adventure of a cat. Doing stuff. Sorry, doing crazy things in very seedy places, and I have to tell you, it gets to the point where I had to put it down because it's very adult. Not that I'm a prude, but it's just that I couldn't focus on it any longer. So it comes in a couple of categories. It also was written by another group, these guys called the Freak Brothers. And this is like the Cheech and Chongs of the comic book stuff. This is in the 70s, so it's not exactly collectible readable, but it still has its own little group of people that follow. But probably one of the most famous ones, and Jordan's going to show you super famous, but this is this is little Abner, okay, 1930s, written by a fellow by the name of Al Cap. Al Cap became very, very, very famous, and over time, he was in every major newspaper. And I'm just showing you this so that you might get familiar with it. But this is, and this was about a group of, I hate to use the term, but hillbillies. This was written about life of a hillbilly. And Little Abner was very popular during World War II, helped many of servicemen and the Korean War get through remembering what home life was all about. So get a chance, you can look it up, check for yourself.
So the reason we, brought this to attention is whenever we have a guest talking about issues in our field, we like to ask them what they collect. So Jordan brought in this is how we got onto the whole thing of comic books is he has an app that tracks his collection and tells him,
Yeah, values.
values going up, going down.
So it tracks everything on you know, eBay or any other sales sites, and it just tells you, and it also helps you keep an eye and track your spending slightly and what you should potentially sell to recoup a little bit of your spending. But it's super fun, and especially with comic books, once you get a certain amount, I probably have 400 or 500 comic books. One box is worth a lot more than the other boxes, but these are kind of my show ones, primarily because it's nostalgic too. You have Superman and He-Man all in one, which this is one that's just super cool because you don't really expect Superman to be fighting with He-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always a cool one to me. It's one of my more expensive ones too. And then one of the earlier stages of Batman and the earlier stages of Spider-Man, which is obviously classics for many reasons. But the older you get, there's different eras of magazines or comic books. The Bronze era. If you're in that era when any of the stuff you're making, you have a very expensive comic book for the most part, especially if it's in mint condition.
Well, what you're really looking for, though, is that golden age of comics, that 1938 to 1956, the introduction of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash Gordon, The Shadow. You get into the Silver Age is 1956 to 1970, which is really what we grew up on, is the birth of Marvel Comics after DC Comics, and that was in 1962. And you have Spider-Man, the Avengers, X-Men, the Daredevil, Fantastic Four. 1970 to 1985 is that Bronze Age that you were talking about, and that's where comics just really exploded. Characters became really examined, and they brought on more and more people. So your modern comics, which is funny, you say modern is 1985 to the present. 1985, I was in college, and I had to bring this. This is, when you have a T-shirt you just can't get rid of? Well, this was my comic T-shirt.
That's awesome.
It was DC Comics Young Romance.
That's great.
And now, as you can see, I was an artist in the studio, so there is paint all over this shirt. I wore it often. The only comic book I have now, the only character I have now is Diana, Goddess of the Hunt. So, that's my girl right now. So,
So let's get back to, because we're running out of time, but let's get back to, we showed some baseball cards. There's another collectibles. And Mickey Mantle, wow.
Well, I want to do a whole other segment on
All right,
that.
we'll have to do that another day. But Mickey Mantle, for those of you who remember him, one of the greatest players of all time, Yankee forever, okay, and loved, and I don't even think anyone ever hated him.
All right, so let's wrap it up. We have this weekend's estate sale is French Country. It's on Colchester Lane. Then coming up, we're going to be doing Antiques to Contemporary on Fulton Place, I think it is, because it's a dead end. And then Cream and Serene is going to be on Elias Lane. And then we end the month on Neoclassical Style at Putter. So we're going to be all over town, from Colchester to Fulton to Elias and Putter. Sign up for the newsletter if you want to stay informed. If you go to our website, dianafineart.com, You can sign up for the newsletter. You put in your email address, and every Thursday afternoon, I publish what sale we're going to be in and what's a new arrival at the gallery. And then the EPC, our next meeting, the Estate Planning Council, if you're a professional in the area, you should join us. It's a Flagler Volusia County chapter, and we alternate between Flagler and Volusia.
And what's your job with them? What's your
I'm
role?
currently the president. And Thursday, April 17th at Daytona 1 on Speedway, we're going to have David Weiss. He is the CEO of Advent Health, and he covers East Volusia, Flagler, and St. John counties. And our next week's show is going to be Torlif Borsting is going to be joining us from First Coast Opera in St. Augustine. And
Our show. Oh, really? He's coming into
Yeah,
from
he's
this.
next week's
We
guest.
went to the opera. We met. That's the fellow
we
we
saw
met.
the magic flute.
Do you have a brooch today?
I don't.
What? Oh my God,
No, I'm broachless.
Mark, you're gonna have to delete that. Okay, you're gonna have to. You don't have a brooch. Okay. Well,
I know.
it's time to
A
say
brooch
goodbye
again.
and thank our guests. So go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks for having me. It was a
Appreciate it.
blast.
All right, Jordan Farrell of
Florida.
Flagler,
Florida. Florida
Beach. Boy, that was
beaches.
tough.
Florida Beaches Real Estate Company.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you definitely want to give them a call. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week. Bye
you.
bye.